On the Armenian United Information Center, we start our briefing. I will be the opening speaker and our position about ranging issues. Then for the opening remarks, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Tatoyan. So our press conference on the fifth day of Azerbaijani aggression against Artsakh, I have to say that during this aggression, Azerbaijan on purpose targets civilian population and civilian infrastructure, causing human and material losses. I would like to let you know that today Armenian and foreign journalists have been targeted by Azerbaijan and Turkey, and it was hours after when the Ministry of Foreign Affairs spoke about the international media outlets covering this incident, and more than 50 international leading media outlets, almost 200 journalists have been accredited in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And more than 100 journalists have been already working in Artsakh. During one of the visits to Artsakh, they were under the fire when Azerbaijan applied force against civilian facilities. A journalist of French element has been wounded and he's been operated in Stepanakert hospital, and the French Republic wants to organize the transportation of the journalists throughout the event. I would like to say the vehicles transporting journalists have also been targeted. One specific point, the journalists have got special insignia and uniform, and Armenian journalists have also been targeted. We wish the aforementioned journalists a very quick healing, and so, on purpose, systematic targeting of the civilian population by heavy artillery, as well as targeting the journalists, is a violation of international law, and this kind of behavior is strictly deplorable. The second aspect is about Turkey's involvement in Azerbaijani aggression, about which the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has made many statements. It has invited the attention of international partners to destabilizing the position of Turkey. And yesterday we gave information about direct involvement of Turkish military experts. We have got specific information that the drones used during the combat activities are used by Turk experts. It is not surprising during 2016 war, again, the drones used by Azerbaijan have been put in motion by foreign experts, and also information has been provided that entire airspace is under Turkish commandment, most likely by the Erzurum and İncirlik commandment, and this kind of Turkish involvement come to undermine the regional stability and peace, and they undermine the efforts of international community to put an end to the combat activities. So the international community has called upon the external actors to refrain from any actions can come to further exacerbate the combat activities, and Turkey has to follow this. And Syrian and involvement by Turkey of Syrian and Libyan militants will have very detrimental impact in the Caucasus region, also from the standpoint of security and safety. This policy fits into foreign policy, the logic implemented by Turkey through the course of recent years. Islamist jihadist movements and territories have become the mercenaries of Turkey, and they are broadly used in drafting the interest of of current Turkish leadership and to export the Turkish policy to other regions. So under these circumstances, I have to say that Azerbaijani is just means of serving this Turkish policy, and we have no doubt that with the time being, the territory of Azerbaijan will be used as a place for deployment of this kind of groups. Moreover, the presence of this kind of terrorists will make Azerbaijan another combat field of bloodshed. This kind of future, this kind of perspective is concerning not only for Armenia and Artsakh, and this is also a threat to the regional security and peace, and this is also a threat for the neighboring regions. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Armenia undertakes all the possible activities in order to present our concerns to all of our partners. For that this kind of destabilizing policy of Turkey gets its acknowledgement and restraint, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with the entire personnel and efforts have been in permanent contact with its partners. Just an hour ago, the Minister of Foreign Affairs had a phone conversation with his French counterpart, and at this very moment, the phone conversation is going on between the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of Armenia and Greece. With this, I am done, and now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Tatoyan. Thank you. Good evening, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to talk about incident with journalists when a range of Armenian and foreign journalists were under the military attack, as a result of which a range of journalists have been wounded, and there were also cases of heavy wounds. I would like to specifically mention I have reviewed with much detail the statement issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Azerbaijan, and moreover, as a human rights defender, as an ombudsman, I have never commented statement of any kind of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of any kind. But as this situation is about the journalists, about the work of journalists in combat zone, I have to comment this. First, the statement is completely unacceptable from the standpoint of international norms. This is a sting violation of international humanitarian law. This is an attempt to change to distract attention from the actions of Azerbaijan. It is obvious that the statement mentions that the transportation of these foreign journalists on purpose to the dangerous zone comes to prove that Armenia undermines its commitments of ensuring the safety of journalists and uses the foreign journalists for its propaganda, and it advises the foreign journalists to get the agreement of Azerbaijan before visiting this zone. First, in the conflict zones and the areas which are on the combat and the war activities are going on, the activities and the work of the journalists are absolutely legitimate, and it is very important to highlight the importance of the work of impartial work of foreign journalists, that the work of the journalists in combat zones, in the war, especially in the war that is waged against our civilian population of Artsakh. So the purpose of the journalists, the purpose of the activities of journalists to display the objective situation. So the purpose of the international journalists is to show the real situation and to draw the attention of international community. The point is about foreign journalists. At this point, we're speaking about independent foreign journalists. So the journalists that have been wounded today, so these journalists are not staff of public administration of Armenia or public administration staff of France, that these are independent journalists, and the purpose is to show the real situation. Besides, the security of the journalists must be ensured, but it must be ensured by the code that the journalists should not be admitted. The safety of the journalists, according to the international humanitarian law, is issued because the journalists have got the same status the civilian population, and consequently the access of the journalist to the specific zone is a basis in order to ensure the safe work of the journalist in this area. And this is an important factor, but not to allow the journalists to visit this. And we have studied from the Azerbaijan journalists, we have learned that international journalists' activities are banned in Azerbaijan. This is a violation, that foreign international journalists do not have an opportunity of visiting those zones. If Artsakh allows coverage of international media, so it means that in Artsakh people are interested that the situation is internationally covered. Besides, I would like to mention that the presumption is always in the benefit of the journalist, especially in this case. We have specifically studied. So the journalists had with specific insignia, sign, press, and they were not in military but in civilian vehicles. Moreover, in Martuni, so the shell was launched to municipality of Martuni, and the journalists were there, and this is where they've been wounded. I would also like to mention that in any suspicious situation, the presumption is always for the benefit of the journalist, and the journalist enjoys the safeguards of civilian population. I have OSCE freedom of speech representatives official letter that I have received. In regard of the visit of one of the international journalists, and it explicitly stated that the work of journalists in Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh is legitimate. It aims at ensuring the safeguards of human rights, and the work of the journalists in the conflict zone is specifically important because the human rights are more vulnerable: the right to life, the right to health, the attacks on civilian population. And so, consequently, with all these reasons, it is completely pointless to talk about. It is completely pointless to talk about the statement made by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Azerbaijan. And definitely I'm going to hand over this official document to our international organization as well as our relevant authorities. I would like to talk about one more thing. And indeed, I wish very expedient healing to our journalists, and I would like to thank the journalists for their impartial work who jeopardized their life in order to cover the situation, but it all has got one objective: to ensure the human rights as well as the protection of the civilian population, as well as to contribute to the prevention of the conflict. The next issue, well, in Vardenis. So about my fact-finding activities in Vardenis and neighboring villages. Yesterday I initiated that, but from the middle of the visit, something around 6 p.m., the drones from Azerbaijani side, when we saw that there are drones, and there was a large delegation, so we had to suspend. So there are several people in our delegation. There were also civilians and some guides, like it is required for the fact-finding mission. So and we had to suspend our fact-finding activities during this the incident during finding incidents, which I have personally witnessed as an ombudsman mission, and I have witnessed that the civilian population and the peaceful settlements have been targeted. So the purpose of our visit was to find facts, the consequences of armed attacks. It couldn't be that the human rights defender, it could be another defendant, but it was more than obvious obvious that we're talking only about the civilians because there are no military facilities in the neighborhood, there's no military equipment there, and only our villages. And I would also like to mention that so we have managed to implement our fact-finding activities in Vartenis, in Sotk, Shatvan, Kut, and in a range of other villages. Unfortunately, we have not managed to implement, but we are definitely going to put it in a couple of villages. So we have implemented it in the areas that have been attacked starting from September 27th. So the villages have been under the armed attack. After that, more aggressive attacks on December 28th, 29th, and also from September 29 up to 30. Also, there will be shell during the night. And the results of fact-finding activities upon the request of the representative of Armenia in European Court on Human Rights. So we are going to publish prepared according to the relevant principles, and we are going to send them to our special authorities as well. One more thing, it is obvious that in the meantime there have been violations. With coronavirus quarantine. This is another violation. It seems to me that we've forgotten this very important fact, but this is a very important factor, not to have any kind of military action, military conflict during this quarantine. And our visits have shown that the villages with the peaceful residents have been shelled by artillery, by heavy artillery, and including village Sotk, and also a residential house next to Sotk village, because the shell has been built, and also the windows have been there. But fortunately, because of the distance learning, there were no children in the school. Besides this, in other villages, we have found projectiles, not exploded projectiles. There were some at a distance of some 50 meters from the residential areas. This comes to show about the intention to cause damage to the civilian population. So we have had individual conversations with peaceful population. So I would like to talk about the support that we have received from local authorities. I would like to thank the governor, Mr. Tatoyan, who has been supporting us all this time. And the third point that I would like to talk about is about from northern Syria, the transportation of mercenaries from northern Syria to Turkey and from Turkey to Azerbaijan. Naturally, we have taken a note this information from international media. Those are extremely concerning, and those served as a reason in order to conduct a survey from the standpoint of human rights. And we have stated 2019, September 26, a UN resolution violation that explicitly bans, not only bans this kind of actions, but they consider to them as criminal. So this resolution is about all those cases when the mercenaries are used in order to undermine the right of the people to self-determination, as well as in all the cases of violation of human rights. And by the resolution of UN on violation of human rights, this kind of behavior is a direct threat to the peace, security, safety, and human rights. And we have also identified that there is a special working group in UN. Today we have summarized the results of our activities about those mercenaries. So our assessments and our analysis After this press conference, we are going to the special working group that will be dedicated only to this, and I'm going to raise this issue using our so we're going to communicate our concern. Why did I start to deal with this issue? And so this is under the direct jurisdiction of human rights defender, because it will direct to humanitarian catastrophe accompanied not only by atrocities, but also it will lead to very painful losses. I'm really concerned about the types of crimes against humanity that might occur. So I'm convinced that the international organizations, especially human rights organizations, must with specific states, not with formal calls, not by general assessment, but with specific steps. They have to take steps, each one within its jurisdiction, in order to prevent this extremely dangerous situation. Unfortunately, human rights organizations have not spoken about this. A range of countries have spoken about this. But as a human rights defender, does not have to deal with the political issues. But I deeply regret that international humanitarian and human rights organizations have not spoken about this yet. And but usually, because sometimes they hide behind political reasons or the justification or weakness of this content. So international human rights organizations must respond. In the opposite case, they undermine the concept of human rights in general, because those organizations have been created for these specific purposes in order to prevent this kind of humanitarian catastrophes during this kind of conflicts. So much, thank you. Mr. Naghdalyan, several questions, if I may. Today, President of France, Emmanuel Macron, has explicitly spoken about Turkey's involvement about the terrorists, but in the statement of OSCE Minsk rooms, there were calls to Armenia and to Azerbaijan, no mention about Turkey, and they were calling upon stopping the feast. In diplomatic terms, what does it mean in a more decisive way? We condemn the escalation. Today, OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs did not issue a statement. The heads of OSCE Minsk Group states have issued a statement. We are familiar with the statement. However, not my level official will do this. What does it mean? In the most decisive way, we condemn the military escalation. This is the call of international community that all the necessary steps must be taken in order to immediately stop the military surge. After this statement, the president of Turkey said that he does not accept it, but the ministers of foreign affairs of Turkey and Russia seemingly agreed that they should immediately stop the fire. Does it mean that the military actions can be stopped? I cannot say what is the wording of the statement of third countries, but we have got the joint position of international community that the steps must be taken in order to terminate the military actions. Whether this wording is within this logic or not, but when the matter is about the role of Turkey and the statements issued by the Turkey, I think that it's been numerous occasions that Minister of Foreign Affairs has made it clear about our position of Turkey's direct involvement in the aggression against Armenia and Artsakh. I would make a reference to the statement by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Armenia. Just one more thing, like like during the aggression of 2016, as well as now, in order to prepare the relevant background of combat activities, it makes some papers. It criticizes the activities of OSCE group and co-chairs. It puts under suspicion the effectiveness of the work of co-chairs. It chases just one objective, and the objective to reinforce geopolitical position of Turkey in the Southern Caucasus. I regret to mention that Azerbaijan becomes a proxy country of Turkey, together with other proxy countries of Turkey, takes steps in order to undermine the stability and peace in the region. As a responsible member of the international community, Armenia and Artsakh will do everything possible in order to promote the stability and security. That's the last question. Iran has been affected as a result of military actions. Someone has been wounded and destroyed houses. So what consequences can it have for Azerbaijan? We are in permanent contact with our Iranian partners, and this communication is permanent on various levels. We regret that Azerbaijan, in order to undermine the safety and security of the region, it uses the territory of our countries in order to wage aggression against Artsakh. So we have comprehensive dialogue with our Iranian partners. It encompasses a broad range of issues. On radio freedom, I have to talk about joint statement of co-chairs. There was no reference about Syrian attackants, although there were some individual statements on behalf of individual countries, on behalf of those countries. What is the standing behind the reason that in the joint statement there was nothing about the mercenaries, and what is your attitude towards the gap? As I said in the beginning, in response to the question of your colleague, we are familiar with the statement made on the level of we are familiar with the statement made by the heads of three states. Well, a bit later on the government level, we will have a response. Will it the Prime Minister? And at this point of time, we cannot say, but so I think that it will be a high-level response to the statement made by the heads of three countries. If there are no more questions, let's get the questions sent online. New Armenia TV company. Putin, Trump, Macron statement. Is it acceptable for Armenian? Azerbaijan is not reliable no more. The enemy puts the blame on Armenia that on purpose it gets the journalists closer to the front line. They should get first the permission of Azerbaijan. I spoke about this, about the second issue. Mr. Tatoyan spoke about the activities of the journalists and the activities of the journalists did not violate any provision of international law. It was fully within the law. And when the matter is about moving the journalists to the front line, to the note of our colleagues, the journalists work within civilian population, and comes to prove that Azerbaijan on purpose targeted civilian settlements and civilian infrastructure. Public television. The Georgia offered platform for dialogue. Are there offers also from the other countries? In the meantime, our international colleagues have made various types of statements. In this regard, I would like to underline that we are in permanent communication with OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs and high leadership of the countries of OSCE Minsk Group. The format of conflict resolution is OSCE Minsk Group format. At this point of time, the priority is undertaking steps towards ceasing of fire and putting an end to the fire in the Museum. Russians have also made a proposal of organizing a meeting. Do you think that there is a perspective of meeting? We highly appreciate the role of our Russian colleagues in the establishment of ceasefire of 1994. We follow up very attentively the constructive involvement of co-chairs. But at this point of time, we have no information of organizing a meeting. Armen Press media reported two aircrafts have landed in Baku supplying weapons. How reliable is this information, and what does our diplomacy do in order to neutralize this kind of support? Israeli sale of weapons to Azerbaijan. Well, in July, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has made a statement. And this issue has always been in our bilateral agenda. Super modern weapon sales by Israel to Azerbaijan is unacceptable for us. By diplomatic channels, on numerous occasions we have informed our Israeli partners about this, and this is really regretful in the period when Azerbaijan, with the support of Turkey, is implementing broad-based aggression against Artsakh. And nowadays, when the whole international community calls upon Azerbaijani to stop the combat activities, Israel continues supply of weapons to Azerbaijan. This position of Israel, this position and these activities of Israel are not acceptable for us, especially in this period of time. Based on this period of time, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has made a decision to call back the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Armenia to Israel. Inform media. Armenian political forces are making statements about recognizing the independence of Artsakh and signing a mutual assistance agreement with Artsakh. Do you think that there can be a situation when Armenia will recognize the independence of Artsakh? The status of Artsakh has always been pressing, and this is one of the fundamental issues of peaceful settlements. So the peaceful process is one of our objectives. In the current situation, we have a situation when Azerbaijan is outside of peaceful process and it's waging broad-based aggression against Artsakh and Armenia. And naturally, various walks of Armenian society is putting back on the agenda the issue of recognizing the independence of Armenia. In the political and legal armory of Armenia, we have got enough tools which can be applied according to the respective developments. Please, let's read also the questions for Mr. Tatoyan. Let's get to the questions for Mr. Tatoyan. New Armenia TV company. The current Artsakh war isn't war. So on the anti-Armenia ethnic propaganda, it is not possible to have an Armenian enclave on the territory of Azerbaijan, and this comes to justify the self-determination of Artsakh. So, first of all, I would like to talk about the permission of Azerbaijan of the work of journalists. This is completely baseless statement. On the contrary, the work of the journalists should be welcomed, especially the work of independent journalists. legal, justified, internationally guaranteed work of journalists, well, no one has to apply for permission in order to country. Exactly the opposite. If they say that the work of the journalist should be permitted, it means that it has got something to hide, and that's why. And I'm quite happy that there are also foreign journalists who give some additional elements of objectivity, and it's completely useless. About the hatred, starting from the very first moment when these armed attacks started against Armenia and also against Armenia, the entire web is accompanied by broad-based hatred speech, calls upon killing against ethnic Armenians. I would like to specifically mention that this is well coordinated and it has got institutional grounds. It has got not that these are not individual users, but this is a preach of hatred coordinated by the state. So we have stated video fields about murders and also calls of murder, Facebook, Twitter, and the most active was TikTok. About TikTok, I made a special reservation that the children, for the children, teachers must not allow us, so no one uses TikTok. And I personally apply to children, and please do not use TikTok. Of course, then I learned that it has been banned, but I would like to mention today we have been called from TikTok, and they have asked the results of our monitoring in order to understand where this hatred is coming from. Indeed, we have expressed our deepest concern, and we have also spoken about the need of control. So we will be in additional contact with them in order to communicate the results of our monitoring. And the most important thing, I wish quick healing to our soldiers who have been wounded, and I would like to express my deepest condolences to all of our soldiers, heroes who perished during the war as a result of Azerbaijani's attack. And I would like to state one thing here. We have to specifically state that our armed forces, in case of Artsakh and in case of Armenia, so our observations come to state this. Our armed forces protect the right to life, right to health of our peaceful population, civilian population, and this is another component that we have to bear in mind in our analysis and assessments. Thank you. Last question, if I may. Edgar Arakelian, Open TV. International community recognized the fact that Turkey and Azerbaijan used international terrorists in the conflict. Is Armenia going to start an anti-terroristic activities against Azerbaijan and Turkey, and whether we are going to initiate an anti-terroristic alliance against them, and what are the steps undertaken at this point of time? With all its potential, first we get the information and that we have got irrefutable information that the section of Turkey, the section of Syria that is under control of Turkey, and they recruit from Syria and Libya terrorists and they transport to Azerbaijan, and we expressed our concern to our international partners. So it will not be limited by a mere statement. On behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, all the necessary steps are undertaken in order to keep our area free, our region free from the impact of other forces that undermine the regional peace and security, and all the mechanisms in this area will be applied. Dear colleagues, with your permission, let us finish our briefing.